how common fungi are in cancer patients. And of course, in 2022, big universities confirmed that in 35 different cancers now, we find fungi in the biopsies. What's the relevancy of that?
In scripture, it tells us to serve people, to teach people, and to encourage people. Today, I have my hero, my mentor, one of my favorite people, and an all around fun guy. Inside joke, but I'll explain it. Doug Kaufmann has been in the industry for unlimited years. And the great thing is, he has a way for you to access him. He's the founder of Know the Cause. He has written many, many books. And today I get to pick his brain. So I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you, Doug, for showing up.
I picked up the fungi. I had a license plate on my car, and every time it said one fungi, Texas, one fungi, Fungi. And every time I'd stop for gas, inevitably somebody would get out and say, "Do you grow mushroom?" So that's kind of what we'll talk about today, fungi.
I remember one of the first times I met you, we had these little buttons that said Doug is a fun guy, and it had a picture of you and then the spelling of, fungi on there.
How long ago did we meet?
Gosh, we've been friends for 25 years. It's been almost 25 years, I should say.
Wow.
So I talk about the fact that you've written all these books. How many books have you written?
13, 13 books. I did a trilogy, the Fungus Link 1, 2, and 3. And in each, I talked about 8 or 9 different disorders: diabetes, hyperactivity, depression. Are these things linked with fungi? And this was, you remember Dave Holland. Dave and I wrote those books. Dave was a microbiologist and a physician. He and I teamed up and wrote books. The first 3 we did on audiobooks. We had this great guy, this guy at church could get on that pulpit and he was smooth as glass. So I hired him to read the entire books and we put them on audio. Those did very well too.
You also have a YouTube channel, a podcast, and one of my favorite things, you go live twice a week for people to submit their questions and you answer their questions live on Facebook.
One of the important things about my career is it was 25 years ago, I was asked to start a television show. I was doing radio at that time. And I have, it grew and it's global now and it's very exciting. But so many people contact us through the office and say, "I have a question for Doug." And I thought back 5 years ago, how do I communicate with these folks? So we started on YouTube and Facebook. We started live 1 hour, Monday and Tuesday, 3 to 4 Central Time, where I just go live and people can listen. I do a little monologue for half an hour or so, and then boom, I get to put the people's questions. And that really did very, very well. And it continues to. We have thousands of people join us every week. I'm not a doctor, but I practiced clinical nutrition for decades. And I tell people, look, if I had this problem, here's what I would do. And then I say, mind you, I'm not a physician, but black cohosh seems to, or DHEA seems to, or wild Mexican yam topically, or did you know that antidepressants kill fungus? That's one of their properties. The research I've done is amazing. 10 years ago now, Pam, a couple of doctor friends and I wrote a paper that was accepted for publication in Oncology News, kind of a revered journal, where we talked about how common fungi are in cancer patients. And of course, in 2022, big universities confirmed that in 35 different cancers now, we find fungi in the biopsies. What's the relevancy of that? That's what I've been talking about for 50 years.
You've done an amazing job and you also work with doctors, but getting people to try doing things now nutritionally before it gets to that point, that's what you educate people on. And that's why I think you're
Mm.
incredible for doing that. It's the service part. Now, do you have a favorite book that you've written?
The most difficult book I wrote was The Fungus Linked Cancer. As a matter of fact, it took me years to write that book, and it's now 20 years old. So we've changed the name to the germ that causes cancer. There is no doubt if your doctor tells you fungus isn't involved in cancer, that's why I wrote on knowthecause.com. They can pull down, print off these couple of pages with scientific references, take it to their doctor. All the books have been valuable. And Pam, here 21, 22 years later, who'd have thought they continue to fly off the shelves? When you consider, Pam, back up with me a little bit. I didn't know. I was living in California. I was surfing. I was living the good life, had a great job. And it appears as though God picked me up, blew dry me, put me into Texas here about 40 years ago when the kids were tiny. And if you take a medical textbook, big information on bacteria, called bacteriology, big information on virus, protozoa, big information, fungus, almost little vaginal yeast, little ringworm, little cradle cap, but if that yeast gets into your body, it can cause devastating effects. Says who? Says the Holy Bible. Remember Moses and Aaron? Moses and his brother go up there. Here's Canaan. The Lord says, I want to give it to you as your possession. But if I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land, you got to go tell the high priest something's wrong. There's fuzz growing on my house. And very often they would have to throw clothing away, tear the house down, etc. Zoom forward thousands of years, it's still like that. But people aren't being told that. They seal up the house thinking, okay, we got the mold killed. All the while, the dog died, the cat's bleeding, the kids are sick. One of them has leukemia. The dad has a high PSA. Mom has all sorts of health problems. There isn't a doctor who understands the damage of the interior of a home can make you very, very sick. 30 times in the Old Testament. I'm just going through it right now in Exodus. The Lord says, leavening, stop, yeast, keep it out of your house, mildew, all the same thing. And yet medical books don't talk about this. The Bible does. And my Bible says, why was this mildew so dangerous? It was a fungus that could spread rapidly and cause disease. Pam, that's all we need. Medicine doesn't want to talk about this. But it was published long before doctors and medical schools were here. Why they're denying it? Can I take a shot at this? Multi-billion-dollar drug is called antibiotic, penicillin. The mold is penicillium. The poison it makes is called penicillin. It has to be poisonous to kill living bacteria. If you take it once, no problem. The more we take antibiotics, the more gut problems, and even many cancers, the risk goes up. Breast cancer, prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, lung cancer. The risk of cancer goes up as you swallow these fungal metabolites. Alcohol, same thing. I mean, it's just, if people would just learn some simple rules, I don't have a product. I'm not here to sell you a product. The information, and most important information in all of my books, is the diet. And the diet says don't feed fungus. Fungus must have carbs, cereals, pasta, bread, sugars to thrive. So you stop feeding it and good health often ensues. I mean, it's been an amazing career as I stand here, an old white-haired guy, and think back years ago when this information was given to me. I can't stop TB. People write us every day. We have stacks of testimonials, and I don't ask for them. And people are saying, my goodness, my kids' health, my husband's health was miserable. And then we changed our diet and began taking omega-3 fatty acids, fish oils. Doctors don't know those kill fungus. And so there are natural things we can get in the health food stores. To kill a fungus, you must stop it from growing and starve it. Not true with bacteria or other things, but fungus is pretty simple to figure out. You only need a month of time to see if your symptoms, be they eye twitches, kidney disease, etc., are fungal linked. Starve it and kill it.
At one time, I was diagnosed with lupus and fibromyalgia, and what in my opinion, what has healed me from having those, and I'm 55 and I do not take any medication. I take supplements. I try to eat right and follow the Kaufmann diet. Now, one of the books that you had, it used to be called What Makes Bread Rise.
People didn't get it. No, I want to lose weight. Well, we have a book called What Makes Bread Rise. Well, no, I want to lose weight. People didn't get the answer is yeast, right? Here's a tidbit for you. It's been widely documented, widely in the journals of pediatrics and so forth, that antibiotics at a young age increase the weight of an adolescent or a child as they're growing up. Okay, that shouldn't boggle anybody's mind. Every farmer knows this, no pediatrician. You give antibiotics to your baby cows, your little cows, not to make them have a higher IQ or look better to the opposite sex. You give them antibiotics to make them grow. And now we're using, in my humble opinion, some very advanced fungal metabolites for growth hormones also. We have to be careful. What makes bread rise? Yeast. What makes people rise? Yeast, uncontained. Remember when you and I were born, God put bacteria and Candida albicans in our intestine. What activates? Ruth and I love old Turner classic movies where the only fat guy in town was the banker or the doctor. Everybody else was like rail thin. All the actors, you look at all the actors in the 1930s and 40s, and then what changed? Antibiotics. Lots of We are, even the Center for Disease Control is on record now stating that about a third of the 211 million antibiotic prescriptions that were written last year, about a third of those, 60, 70 million, were unnecessary. And unfortunately, the average doctor learns during his medical training, well, it can't hurt, put them on antibiotics. Wow. Let them be wrong, Pam. Don't let them be dead wrong.
We're given these when we're teenagers for acne. It's unbelievable. So you mentioned it for injecting it into cattle, hormones, and antibiotics. What are your thoughts on what we're doing to these poor menopausal women with what we call their bellies? What are your thoughts?
uh, Pretty well documented on a website. All of your viewers can go on bcpp.org, type into their search engine Zeranol, Zeranol, and boom. For decades now, the FDA has allowed the inclusion of an estrogenic mycotoxin, well documented in the scientific literature, into our meat supply. So when a calf, they got those little things and it oozes into their system. Apparently, the antibiotics weren't fattening our cows quick enough. We want them to live 7 months, 8 months. And so we added another estrogenic mycotoxin. And bcpp.org posts research that'd blow anybody away. Little girls eating popcorn, take urine before and after. They found Zeranol, it's actually zearalenol, is the mycotoxin levels in their urine elevated after eating popcorn. It's pretty consistent with breast cancer cell lines that we find this Zeranol. Zeranol is a synthetic natural fungal mycotoxin called zearalenone. I won't go to a restaurant and eat a steak. I'm that hard. I will buy a steak. I will grass-fed. Every cow's grass-fed. Don't be sold on that line of baloney. Grass-finished is what you want. Grass-fed and grass-finished. Because even the grass-fed people allow the last month cows to go out and eat a lot of corn. Corn is often impregnated with these fungal metabolites. We need to know, Pam, what does an animal do when they get sick or they bloat or they get diarrhea or their skin or hair starts falling in? They stop eating. I tell pet owners I love dogs, Ruth loves cats. When your animal gets in trouble, put some chloroxygen. It's called little bottle chloroxygen. Put about 10, 12 drops of this chlorophyll in their water because a sick animal will continue drinking, but it won't eat. If we would take, a few days off of food, I think we'd get well more quickly. Simply put, medical schools are not teaching clinical nutrition or clinical mycology, the effect of fungus, because God bless them, Pam, they don't know. I look at the very ending of Jesus' life. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I mean, I get about 1,100 a month now questions coming my way, and I try and address the big ones first. Every wife loves their husband. I had this happen yesterday. And so every husband is told, go to the doctor, get checked out. What the man doesn't know is if he drank some beer before he goes to the doctor and gets a PSA test, his PSA may be higher. No doctor knows that. No doctor's going to mention it. We have testimonials here. John was showing me one this morning of a couple who went to the doctor. His PSA was 20. They're not sick. They have no night urinating and so forth. They don't have symptoms, but the wife wants them to go to the. I'm telling you, this PSA, in my humble opinion, is one of the biggest gimmicks we have today in medicine. It's overdiagnosing, overtreating, and overkilling many, many men. I am 100% convinced of that, as are they. Doctors, there was an article, Pam, that came out. If for a man to do nothing after he's diagnosed with prostate cancer, it is being recommended, depending on the grade of the cancer. When men do something, there's a 4% increase in the risk of death. When men listen to their urologist and do something. So that alone, and that's all documented in the scientific literature. Most women don't know this, but mammograms are found to be about 58% accurate. What did you get in high school when you got a 58 on a test? An F. And yet, boy, these are mammograms saving lives. They may be, but I'm deeply concerned that we are overdiagnosing, especially older women with mammography. So these are the things I bring to the TV audience. Very controversial 25 years ago. I've been slapped a few times. Pam, I'll never forget getting in trouble on my first gig, my first television gig, because I told someone who called in, "What can I eat?" And I said, "Chicken breast." After it was over 25 years ago, I got a finger wagged at me. You can't say breast on TV. And I got my car and drove home, called my wife, said, "I can't believe this." I go way, way back with this stuff. You have to be careful. If your audience only knew the value of good living foods over what we're eating today and calling it good, it's doing one thing for certain. It's keeping our emergency departments, our hospitals, our doctors' offices, and the pharmaceutical industry that surrounds all of this very profitable.
You mentioned that website, and I will put it in the show notes so that people can go back and reference it along with your books and all your information. But
Mhm.
what other things do you feel are contributing to,
Mhm.
say, breast cancer or PCOS? Because here again, these young women are on birth control, and then a lot of them have been put on antibiotics for acne or something else through their lives, and nobody says anything about taking probiotics or antifungals. What else might be found on that website, do you think, that would be helpful?
The website is a very good website. It is technical. All I want your audience to know is if you wonder, do cell lines seem to align with this hormone the FDA is letting us put in our store bought meat? Mhm. Are we passing this hormone through our bodies, out our urine? Even young girls, can it accelerate puberty, precocious puberty? And that's the website that you want to find that information on. Pam, it just blows me away how everything in science is hushed. I think here's the good news. The past 3 or 4 years, a lot of us have raised our eyebrow. Okay, if that's going on there, what's going on in medicine? Justifiably. I raised my eyebrow in operating rooms. I'm a Vietnam veteran, as you know, and as corpsman, as hospital corpsman, emergency department trained, we spend some of the time out with the Marines in the field. Pam, we'll have a coffee. So we'll talk about that. And then we spend the rest of our time in Da Nang at the hospital. I saw things happen that really hardened me to all of this. You're proud, and you should be, at 55 years old, that you're on no drugs. I'll be 75 this year. I don't have a doctor. Uh, do I have a backup? I have studied things that I've mentioned today, caprylic acid in coconut, MCT oils. And I remember taking my grandma to Dr. Westerbeck out in California. Nice guy. She was told to carry an orange in her purse if she got into a diabetic coma. I remember all these, taking my dad in for prostate cancer. And I thought, boy, I'm going to hate turning 50 or 60 years old, becoming an old geezer and having to go to all these doctors. I haven't done it. I'm going to wait as long. We're mortal, right? Eve took care of that. Adam and Eve, we're all mortal. And we're going home one day. 80% of us, I believe the statistics are, will die in a hospital. I hope not to. Yes, we're going to die. How can I then live to be this old and feel this good? Worked out yesterday afternoon, sweating, dripping. I live a different life. I am 100% convinced that antibiotics and alcohol are absolutely the two most dangerous. Okay in your 20s and 30s, but not okay after, the age of 50. The more antibiotics that are shoved at us, I think the higher. Let's talk. You said breast cancer. I mean, that's good. What do we know about breast cancer? Three things published 15 years ago in cancer journals. Number one, women who take a lot of antibiotics have an increased risk of breast cancer. Remember, they're fungus. Number two, women who drink alcohol of any kind have an increased risk of breast cancer. Mycotoxins, alcohol, right? And number three, women who eat starches or carbohydrates have an increased risk of breast cancer. It feeds fungus. So I've used that one. I've lectured to groups of doctors, oncologists. I used that one. And Pam, you could hear a pin drop. I was so nervous when I spoke to in San Diego to a group of many, many oncologists. My knees were shaking, up on the podium. Here I am, a lowly, guy talking to all these important doctors. But these docs they spare chemotherapy. Instead of a full dose, maybe 10%. Let's look at the patient's stress. Let's look at the patient's home, often filled with mold. There's just things we have to do to get to be my age without a doctor or a lab test. Pam, I have a friend, I think you know this doctor out here, and he said, Doug, you've never had are you a methylator? And I said, I don't think so. And he said, well, you are. Everybody is. And he said, what's your PSA? And I said, I don't know. You've never been to a doctor for that? No, I don't have a urologist. And he said, okay, Doug, I need to straighten you out. I'll pay for it, but let me take a tube of blood from you or 7, send it off to all these labs. Everything came, oh no, my cholesterol was really high at 215 or something. And he said, I'm kind of duty bound. I should give you a statin. And I said, oh, you can give it to me. I'll find a place to put it, but it isn't going to be in here. So here's an old guy that didn't know if I could make it 40, 50 years ago with the hand that was dealt me. Dad died of heart disease, mom of cancer, sister with breast cancer, Mark with prostate cancer. So there's cancer and heart disease all over my family. And here I am, knock on wood, feeling better than I ever have, but I can't go to a football game with my friends and drink beer. And I can't sit around on Halloween and eat candy. I live a fairly restricted life, but I'm loving it that I'm still on TV and my brain still works pretty good at my age.
So much to cover here. So, first of all, I want to mention that I have not had health insurance in over 25 years. And you talk about getting side eye looked and all of that. However, I did start February 1st for the first time in 25 years with health insurance. And I agreed to it because, well, my husband has always had it, but I want to be able to go hiking. And I bought some roller skates, but I'm scared to death to get on them because I am 55. I want to be more active without the fear of having those enormous bills. And I had heard that a broken leg or something is upwards of $50,000, $60,000. So that is something that I'm with you on that page. And when people ask me, well, why don't you have health insurance? I say it's kind of like if I have car insurance, but I don't own a car. I'm not going to go to the doctor and say, "Hey, my nose is all sniffly. What can you give me?" I'm somebody who likes to take responsibility for my own health. When I was 17 years old, I donated blood for the first time. And they sent me a lab workup, and my cholesterol at 17, and I was not heavy at all. My cholesterol was 241, and nobody blinked an eye. There was nothing wrong with having a cholesterol of 241. Now, if your cholesterol is over 150, we've got to put you on all of these drugs. Can you talk a little bit about what leads that train of thought?
Wow, good point, Pam. Thank you. I see an insurance card as a get out of jail free card. And you're right. People are using this card. I'm paying for it. I may as well go to 6 doctors. I'll never forget working at the hospital out here with David Weekly. You remember Dr. Weekly out of Johns Hopkins. I worked with him for years. The patients would come up to the girl would slide the glass thing open. Hey, is Doug running behind? No, he can see you now. Good, because I have to go to the bone doctor after this, then my psychiatrist, I got to refill Valium, and then I have to go to the woman doctor. They take a day off work and go to all these doctors. When one-stop shop doesn't make sense. More and more since the advent of COVID, people are beginning to understand. Pam, you are free the second you take charge of your own health. I don't sell off-on switches. I don't think you can shut cancer off. I sell rheostats. I think you can turn your symptoms way, way down. You've been able to do it. You and I have talked through the years. I've been able to do it. But conversely, if I want to go party with friends, a birthday party, for example, with my grandkids, I'll crank that up a little bit. I'll have a piece of cake, maybe a little scoop of ice cream on that to let those little kids be around me. It's so much fun. And I pay the price. The next morning, that night, I might have GERD. The difference between me and the other, millions of people is I know what caused it. They don't, because they eat like that all the time. Worse, their healthcare provider. What are those 3 words? Healthcare provider doesn't have a clue. Oh, your acid reflux? Well, I need to get you on beta blockers. I need to put you on these medicines for long periods of time. You have ringing in the ear? Don't worry, I can put you on this medicine. Yeah, but that medicine causes headaches. Don't worry, I got headache medicine. Yeah, but that can cause knee pain. Don't worry, I got knee. I mean, this is the world. This is the crazy world we are living in. I backed out of that in my 30s. I stopped drinking. I never smoked. I tried in Vietnam, but it made me high. I smoked a cigarette and my brain, and I'm an emergency, if one of those Marines get hit, I have to be there. So I backed out of all that. I wanted to be cool at 19, 20 years old. I think the bottom line to my life, I didn't have insurance, but I got it now. If you can wait 10 more years, you can roller skate all you want. It's called Medicare. You get it free. And they're selling you on TV of 14 different, A, B, C, D. It's like hepatitis, A, B, C, D, E, F. And I've saved up some money. I collected old motorcycles and cars, sold those, and we have money in the bank. So if I trip roller skating, then I'll go get some money. I'll go to the hospital. But if I need drugs and special doctors, I'll have to dip into my savings. So that's kind of the way I've lived my life all along. My TV show is named Know the Cause with an exclamation point. You guys have to understand how that lump got there. You have to understand when you're 52 years old, things are going to change. I've worked with so many women that didn't go through menopause. I feel so bad for women who have to go through menopause. My own wife didn't go through it. No idea it was there because they lead lives where they don't touch alcohol, they don't smoke cigarettes, they don't eat out of a box or a can. And I think to a large extent, that and proper supplementation gets a lot of women through it. And what do you do when you get in it? Whatever happened to the day, I used to recommend to the women at the hospital something called wild Mexican yam. I mean, it worked. It was so amazing to me how they'd rub it on topically. And, 2, 3 days later, I'd see them in the hallway or something. Doug, what is that stuff? Doctors had me on ester, all this stuff. And I've been off that and on your wild Mexican yam for 3 days. It didn't work universally, but for many, many women, it was $19. It was a home run. So that's what I hope people begin realizing when you swallow omega-3 fatty acids, when you swallow coconut, when you eat broccoli, sulforaphane, you're eating medicines. You can pay me now or pay me later. And I'm proving you can pay me now. It's not fun being an old guy and not being able to enjoy, Christmas with chocolate Santa Claus and so forth. But it's worth it getting to see the grandkids at this age and so forth. I really feel good. I know a lot of doctors. I can't pick up the phone. I've never imposed on any of them. Hey, I got sinusitis. Could you give me an antibiotic? I've never done that. Thank God I haven't had to yet. But 80's around the corner and maybe, who knows?
So I agree. I haven't taken antibiotics in 25 years, but I do. As told you, being very honest, I'm human. You're superhuman. I drink wine occasionally, but I used to drink it pretty regularly.
Mhm.
And I did have the hot flashes, the night sweats when I eat badly, when I have french fries or chocolate chip cookies. I can feel it. I never wanted to be that person that says, no, 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 you can't have that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what makes me feel better. It's getting easier to say no because I started saying no. And I feel like I want to shout it from the mountaintops, even though you have been doing that forever.
What I tell people, I help them through their psoriasis and their misery, and they'd confide in me. Hey, Doug, I'm going to the OBGYN in 2 weeks. Is there anything you'd recommend? Or men would say, I hate this. I go to the doctor every year and, get the test done. I got to tell everybody, I feel like shouting this from a mountaintop. For a week or 10 days before a pap smear, a mammogram, a digital rectal exam, men for prostatitis, don't drink alcohol. And if you can possibly go off of antibiotics, you'd be shocked. Data is weak on this. You'd be shocked how many people wouldn't be told, ooh, there's some exfoliated tissue on the cervix. It looks like I got to do a colposcopic exam now because this looks abnormal. Or what's that little thing in the breast tissue? Or man, your PSA was 6.0. If it is, and you've had antibiotics or alcohol within a week of this or 10 days, go back and get it retested. Just say, can I come back in 10 days, doc, and get another PSA test done? Well, sure. Why? It's already in. I mean, that lab is reliable. Labs don't make a mistake. Oh, don't get me started. But absolutely go back in 1 week or 10 days without alcohol or antibiotics. In other words, Pam, I happen to believe we are hyper diagnosing everything from childhood disorders for profit, to female problems, to male problems. Before we had the PSA, by the way, Pam, I interviewed, we've got 115,000 views. It's on YouTube. I interviewed Dr. Richard Ablin. When I was in Vietnam in 1970, he discovered the PSA molecule. And he's written this scathing book, The Great Prostate Hoax, how his invention ruined men's lives. And he's right. The urology departments are now admitting this. Now they're calling this diagnostic PSA test a ballparker. Well, they're still going to do it because it's yielding so much return, so many biopsies, so much. And Pam, God bless them. If you don't teach the 180 IQ kids you and I went to high school with, if you don't teach them the truth, then they're going to follow. If you don't, what do they say? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. They believe antibiotics are the lifesavers. They don't believe in antifungals. Antifungals can hurt people's liver. Many doctors that I've taught use diflucan. Remember what diflucan was 40 years ago? It was the first FDA approved, as I recall, treatment for AIDS. Wait a minute, AIDS is a virus. They took an antifungal, human papillomavirus, Epstein-Barr virus, human immunovirus, all activate and elevate and become cancerous in the presence of Aspergillus fungus. So if you're living in a home with penicillium or Aspergillus in the ducting system, that's why I wrote all these books. Every time I turn over a new stone, I got to tell the audience. And the great thing is I can now do that with these live shows on Rumble and Facebook. And I can do it every day. I teach every day during the show. People need this information because I don't sell products. I'm pretty free to teach the truth from the scientific literature. If I sold products to help people with, HIV, then I'd come under the microscope. I don't need to. I need people to know their health is there. It should be their number one care. If everybody could feel like me at my age, we'd have a pretty good world.
In the past, when I got really sick, I had 5 bald spots on my head. I was overweight. I just had acne and all these things, and they diagnosed me with lupus. I allowed them to give me the Plaquenil, and when it started giving me even more symptoms with no help, then I decided that I would start taking responsibility. God did place me in the health food industry, the natural health field. And it motivated me to study to be a naturopath, become a nutrition consultant, and it put me into the path of recovery. Well, we all get used to something. And so here I am, 20 years later, and I'm 55, and I want to look younger or at least not age as fast. What are your thoughts on that carnivore diet that's out
Mm-hmm.
there that everybody is talking about?
So first of all, in the old days, I would have called it, probably before you were born, Pam, we called it the caveman diet. So what a caveman would have beat on the head and dragged back to his cave, that's kind of what they ate. Um, I too, much like you, experiment with everything. I felt the best I ever felt in my life, but I'm looking at that objectively. I mean, I'm a guy who understood that there are good fats, carbohydrates, proteins, et cetera, that were necessary in the. And a true carnivore diet is kind of a zero carb diet. You eat what runs on the land, flies or swims, and or their eggs. And that's what you eat. My dear son, who is now 41 years old, wow, is following that strictly. Pam, I can't believe. He said, Dad, I'm never going off this thing. I feel the best. My brain works. He's been on it since New Year's. He's doing wonderfully. Remember, a strict, not even keto, a strict carnivore diet means fungus living on board is not getting one. You're benefiting from the good fats, the amino acids, etc., in those foods. I would not be afraid of it at all. The day, Pam, mom and dad, heart disease, cancer, both sides of my family, the day I hear those words, you have cancer, I'm a carnivore. I'm going on it for 6 months. I'll probably steam a bowl of spinach, or get some brassica or cruciferous vegetables in my diet also. But I think the game plan when you have a disease is to starve the disease. Can't starve bacteria, you can't starve a virus, but you can starve fungi, from which I believe most disease stems. I don't know if you're aware, Pam, but about 15 months ago, Weizmann Institute in Israel, UCSD, University of California in San Diego, and other collaborators, I think there was 10 medical schools, took 17,000 biopsied cancers wrapped in paraffin in drawers for years out. And they found that in 35 different prostate, brain, lung, breast, colorectal, they found fungus growing in 35 different kinds of cancer. My hypotheses, I mean, how blessed am I? Because 40 years ago, I started saying there is an intimacy that exists between leukemia. Check your bedroom for mold. Have someone come in professionally, test your house. It will be the best money you ever spend if you're diagnosed with cancer. My wife and I, when we sold our home, the kids grew and left. We looked at a nice home out here, but the realtor took us in and we both said, "Whoa, what's that smell?" And she said, "Oh, there's a mold problem." And Ruth looked in the window and said, "How come all the furniture is still?" Well, they both died of lung cancer. We're not genius, but it didn't take a genius to figure out, okay, they're inhaling that every day. It's trapped in there and they died of lung cancer. And I'm telling you, realtors now share stories with me, school teachers. Why are all the kids sick when you go back into school? Because you go back into school in the hot weather and the air conditioning's on, you know, and the mold spores are freed up and those little kids and substitute teachers. There is an entire field of medicine that has been grossly overlooked. And you can hypothesize as to why, or you can dig in, study this stuff. Pam, this is the fungus link to women's health problems, including menopause. I'm going to send this out. I think you would absolutely love this. That is my most recent book. It's just flying off the shelves. I'm trying to do a male book right now, but I keep thinking, am I going to be doing this at 95 and, writing books and putting them out with grandkids? As you well know, I'm spending a lot of time having fun now and not so much time at the drawing board anymore. I think especially your transparency, I think you're going to be one of the great all-time bloggers because you're one of the rare people that says, okay, I've done it. I got to be honest with you, I've done it. And I think and I'd like to give you a hand with this on television. I'd really like to see you rise because you're young. No matter what you say, you're young and your words need not fall on deaf ears. So any education I can help you with mold problems that cause inner ear problems in your kids and brain problems and depression and so forth, I want to do it. It's all published now. Whereas 53 years ago, none of it was. I had to go to libraries and find it. You're doing good, Pam.
You have 2 shows a week that you do live on Facebook. What time are those? What days?
So Central Time, I'm out of Dallas. Central Time, Monday and Tuesday. Now we're going to be switching it up as we add new social media platforms. But thus far, for the past few years, Monday and Tuesday at 3 to 4 p.m. Central Time. And you can join by going to Rumble or Facebook and listen and then ask away. I do a monologue. Today, we're going to talk about how doctors are now saying we are grossly overdiagnosing medical conditions. So I do what's in the literature and then I answer questions. So I think people will enjoy it if they can join us and see how it works. And then I'd like you to join me on TV and we'll get that set up also. You can do that from, the comfort of your own home, just like we're doing now. And then let me post 3 to 4 minute segments of my friend Pam on here. You're going to rise, man. You're doing really, I'm so proud of you. And you also are very transparent and you're going to help a lot of people.
I've kind of shied away from it over the years because I'm not perfect, but I feel like people need a little dose of imperfection in their lives, just like I do, because if I can serve people with my mistakes, I mean, didn't you get started because you had health problems too in the first place?
Yeah, long story really short. I came back from Vietnam in 1971, totally different person than I went to Vietnam. I was doing collaborative work on a research paper with Dr. Everett Hughes at USC Medical School when I got back. He was on the ninth floor of a tower. Literally, Pam, I couldn't get on an elevator with anyone else. My heart would beat. I'd start sweating. Something went horribly wrong. we didn't know in 1971 what post-traumatic stress was, but I think a lot of that was that. We now know that can impede cortisol, can impede the immune system. And so I suffered a lot of, I had jungle rot on my arms, and it was very, very bad at that time. And Dr. Hughes said to me, "Did you eat raw fish in Vietnam?" And I said, "Yeah, a couple times we did." And he said, "Okay, go to the library, get a card and study parasitology." This is the way God's always worked in my life. I opened this book. I got all these health problems. Like you, I had baldness in the back, and now I got a full head. And so I opened up this book, 1953, as I recall, parasitology. And there was a chapter that said yeast and fungi. Yeast are single-celled fungi. Yeast and fungi parasitizing man. Well, I'm looking for worms, not yeast. But then I knew that all of what they call jungle rot is a mycobacterium. Myco means fungus. And I thought, wait a minute, could this be yeast? Has it gotten in my bloodstream? And the rest was history. I went on a diet. Pam, you're transparent. I smoked marijuana. I drank a lot of alcohol to bury my troubles. And my early 20s were kind of a blur. But I noted this. Dr. Hughes said to me, "You need to change your diet." "What's your diet?" I said, "Coors beer, bologna sandwiches, and chocolate chip cookies." And he said, "Okay, listen to what you're saying." He was a very wise guy. And so 2 weeks later, I couldn't come up the elevator again. I went up the stairs and I was huffing and puffing. He said, "Did you change your diet?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What is it now?" And I said, "Now it's salami sandwiches and Budweiser beer and Oreo cookie." That's the mental, that's the way most people are. I'm going to change my diet. I'm no longer eating salami. I'm going to eat bologna. I'm going to change my chips. I mean, it was, and he was one of my mentors. He and, oh, I've had so many. If I seem tall to people, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. He was one of, and he said, no, you, you know, write down what your diet is. I took it to him and he said, "Okay, do you like steak?" "Love steak." "Okay, I want you to eat steak for a few days. You like hamburger?" "Love hamburger." "No bun?" "No, you can't have bun, no condiments." Fell, maze. And I fell off that all the time. Friday night, I worked at a medical center. Friday night, I could go drink again. And I finally got my whole problem, Pam, was my wrist. I kept, if my wrist wasn't involved, I couldn't have a good time. And so I learned through the process of elimination, I had better get my act together. And so I cut those things out of my life, not knowing what I would know 53 years down the line. And that is by eliminating those things back then, like you, I have grandkids who have birthday parties and so forth. But I can see if I fall off, like you, I can see the next morning I'm complaining because there's no money in the bank. I'm mad because we don't have this meat, And so Ruth and I, fortunately, we've been together almost 50 years. We we laugh about this. Crabby, you ate that chocolate chip cake, you know. So I think we're all there. All I'd like to do is offer your audience a glimpse into what life can be like with a carnivore diet for a week. Eat eggs, make a lot of hard-boiled eggs, eat meat, eat chicken breast, eat chicken thighs, eat fish. Try it for a week. The majority of your audience, this helps diagnose, I believe, the diet helps diagnose an underlying fungal pathology. If you starve it for a week, you'll wake up feeling like $1,000,000. Now, where do you go from there? That is up to you. But where you won't go from there, once you get it, is from doctor to doctor, to doctor to pharmacy, to doctor to pharmacy. We're a treadmill. We're hamsters on a treadmill in this medical world of ours.
I love it so much. It's taken me a long time. I fall off the wagon, I get back on. And it's taken me that process over the years to realize and finally say, okay, it's even worse once you hit menopause. It's even worse once you get older. I wish I had learned my lesson back when you learned your lesson, but it's never too late. So I plan on moving forward. So the name of your TV show and website and all of the things, knowthecause.com, right? And Know the Cause?
Lots of information. I have doctors that I pay who load a lot of fungal information that you can print, take to your doctor if he or she doesn't agree that fungus is a problem. It's a huge problem that we almost totally overlooked.
And that's what you do. You help people to help themselves. I can't wait for my listeners to get a chance to know you and follow you. Thank you so much for being here.
My honor. Thank you so much, Pam.